Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Vegan World 2026 Moonshot podcast. Today's episode is also about food healers. So we did one last week about food healers. And today we are going to be talking to Ian MacFarlane and his colleagues from South Africa who are doing some amazing work with some political leaders and ordinary people regarding food healers. And we're also going to be talking to Aisha Robinson from Atlanta, Georgia, who is working with the marginalized communities. And she has vegan meals that heal. So that's her bailiwick here. And so now I want to tell you why I invited these two groups of people together. Because what we are doing in the food system today is an engineering shambles. So we are extracting 6 times as much food as we really need from nature. And we are distributing it so unevenly that people who have money are eating unhealthy foods and getting sick. And then the people at the bottom are not getting enough food and they're going hungry. And our political leaders say, hey, this is impossible to solve. How do we solve this, right? It's so difficult. And as an engineer, I look at it and I say, what the heck is wrong with these people? So clearly, there is something else going on, which is how are they optimizing the distribution of food? They're optimizing it to make the most money out of you. And how do you make the most money out of people? Well, get them sick. Then you can make money by selling them medicine. So that's the kind of system that we are in. And we are now being called to transform it. We have no choice but to do that. And that's what these two groups of people are really doing on the ground. So I'm going to add them to the stream now. So that's Aisha Robinson.
Hello.
Hi, Aisha. Good to see you.
Good seeing you too. How are you today?
Very good. So that's Ian MacFarlane from South Africa and Dawn, his wife, nutritionist.
Hi, Ian, Dawn.
Hi.
And Dr. Andrew Robinson.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
Hold on a second. I am trying to figure out how to get the other two people on. They're hidden behind.
I'm interested to see how we related. Me and Aisha.
Aisha and Andrew, yes, you need to talk about that.
Right.
How are you related?
We're distant relatives. You can see the complexion difference. It's my cousin.
Well, Silesh is an expert in discerning patterns in nature, so maybe you can give us some clues on the connection.
Exactly.
Oh, I see it. Okay, got it. We have Michelle. That's Ian's sister.
Oh, Michelle.
And is that Martin?
Hi there.
Wonderful.
Martin.
So I'm so glad to have you all here. Thank you so much for being here. So let me start by asking Ian, how did you get into this? Tell us a bit about yourself. How did you get into Ubuntu Wellness, and what is Ubuntu? Let people know what Ubuntu really is.
Thank you for the invitation to be here, Silesh, and to discuss these matters. So really, Ubuntu comes from the phrase "unmuntu ngumuntu ngabantu," which means we are together connected. I am because you are, and this is a sort of understanding or philosophy that's echoed in every country in Africa with a slight permutation, but it's a common thread knitting the quilt of connection together. So whichever country you're in, it might be Ubuntu or Ubuntu. And really, we can say this is one of the gifts from Africa to the world, in that it reminds us that we are literally interconnected. All of our understandings now and delving into the quantum field and sustainability and realizing interconnectedness traces back to this common understanding of Ubuntu from Africa. It does have historically quite a human-centric permutation of I am because you are, my wellness is because of your wellness, as a human to human. And there are many people working with incredible projects, bringing Ubuntu out to the world, working with food security, working with human rights, working with social justice issues. And yet with Ubuntu Wellness, we like to see Ubuntu as applying also to the planet and animals. So it becomes a kind of interspecies Ubuntu evolution along the lines of your wonderful books, like your Carbon Yoga, the Vegan Metamorphosis, speaking about, we need a chrysalis moment as humanity to pause on the consumption and the voracious, destruction of our finite resources, and transform into a new, evolved humanity, like a Homo ahimsa, something like that. And Ubuntu seems the perfect recipe to help alchemize that moment and that evolution.
Right. But before we heal ourselves, we need to, before we heal the planet, we need to heal ourselves. Before we transform, we need to heal ourselves. So tell us about the Ubuntu Wellness program and what you're doing with Premier Alan Mind, and who else is involved in that?
So in September, we were able to issue a challenge to the Premier of our province, Premier Alan Winde, who's also the leader of the official opposition party, the Democratic Alliance of South Africa. He's a very substantial and well-respected politician. And through various means, we got to know him, and were able to issue a personal challenge for himself and his very public sharing of his health journeys and challenge, being a diabetic, and also having struggled with COVID. And he not only received the challenge for his own health to try a 21-day plant-based reversal of his type 2 lifestyle diabetes, but he understood that if and when this works, the implications would be very significant for the country, for the province you're in, for helping to bring about a kind of green solution, a scalable solution. So he immediately understood this is perfect for himself. He is very happy for it to be documented for public health and behavior lifestyle modification purposes. And it's fascinating that he could accept the challenge and then extend it so we can include other leaders. We could have Prince Buthelezi. We do who was the leader of the Inkatha Freedom Party, and we do have his son Zuzi, Prince Zuzi Buthelezi, already confirmed, who's also a diabetes sufferer. And to be inclusive, South Africa is highly divided economically, and we have been working with projects with the health department to bring plant-based community chefing in. And so to be cognizant of the economic disparities and to be inclusive, we'll also be including some community and sort of shack dwellers from the very poorest components of society who can benefit from the program together. And then we have Andrew Robinson, Professor Robinson from Northwest University, who will assist us he's also the chairman of PAN, South Africa, the Physicians Association of Nutrition. And it's wonderful that he and the university, works at Northwest University, will be able to assist us to document and academically record, I think for the first time in Africa, the results of having a low fat, high carb, starch, predominantly traditional African rural diet as a perfect medicine and antidote to the rich, oily, and unhealthy Western diet that we're subjected to most of the time, and particularly those at the lower end of the economic bracket who suffer with health issues from everything from diabetes to COVID. So this could be a really remarkable application in Africa being done overseas. We have the program from SHARAN, the 21-day program that Dr. Nandita Shah has skillfully developed, made available to us for this 21-day program. And she received the Nari Shakti Award from President of India in 2016 for reversing over 30,000 type 2 diabetes sufferers in India. So we really have a lot of moving parts coming together, and it is quite an exciting project.
Absolutely. This is awesome. Dr. Robinson, I read your the note that you wrote to Premier Wine, and I was thrilled that we are so resonating with each other. You know, I'd say exactly this. Could you please repeat that? Tell us what you said to Premier Robinson, Premier Wine.
I will if I find the document in front of me, but
you can say it in your own words, obviously.
I have it here. If I could quote Professor Robinson, I could. Could I, Andrew?
Sure.
Okay. So this was a part of motivation letter that went to Premier Allen, and it was very beautifully.
This was just one paragraph out of a long letter of wonderful stuff. Yeah. He couldn't say no.
No, he couldn't, and he didn't, and I'm sure this landed very well for him when he read this from a leading professor, medical doctor, and one of the first researchers into all sorts of pioneering therapeutics in the past in the world. So thank you, Professor Robinson, who said, "This is a rare opportunity to make." Greetings, Premier Wendy. This is a rare opportunity to make a lasting change for the better. If humanity hopes to survive much longer on this planet, radical transformation is going to be necessary. That journey, if you take this challenge, you will find actually is wonderful. Only if we truly nurture and love ourselves can we nurture the planet back to health. We are all in this together. All living beings, including Gaia herself, have the ability to heal if just given the chance to do so. As with all change, it always starts with oneself. All the best and enjoy only the best health. Best regards, Professor Andrew Robinson.
Thanks.
That was so awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Tell us your experience, how you got into it, and what do you intend to do in the Ubuntu Wellness program?
Got into what?
Got into how did you become vegan, first of all?
Okay. I've eaten a lot of meat, and I've traveled in China long ago, and I've eaten many types of animals. I've caught and killed, but fortunately for me, no mammal. So. But still, and then I tried. I was overweight. I was over 100 kilos. But that wasn't the thing. I just wasn't feeling my best. And the keto diet was you lose weight like anything, but you feel terrible. And then a colleague of mine in my second year at medical school, Rowan Wilson, he was the sort of bright guy that would lie on his bed listening to classical music and the next day go into exams and get distinctions, and his roommate would be studying all night and get scrape 50s. he wrote a book, Why Animals Aren't Food, and I was interested and I read it. And I started. I'm not a true vegan because that's another story, but 100% plant-based. The moment I stood on the plane, when I went with the delegation from our province, including the political head of health, to visit our medical students in Cuba and to visit the medical school in Jamaica. And I didn't eat it, and that was it. I read Rowan's book, and it's since then, that's how I started. I grew up on a dairy farm. I know the industry, and now I totally plant-based. I've got a small piece of property outside Mai King, which is in one of the provinces, and I had it all sectioned out for small domestic animals. But now it's plants mainly, and 3 ostriches. So that's kind of how I got into understanding and knowing about plant-based, because we weren't taught anything about it at medical school.
Right. So then, what are you planning to do during the Ubuntu Wellness program?
Well, to use this opportunity with these prominent people and try and match them. South Africa is politically still sensitive, and it's good to match, but it's not going for statistical power. It's going for it'll be a individual case control. So each person will be their own case control, but I still have to get ethics approval if I want to publish it in the professional press, which I'd like to. Mm-hmm. It is publishable, and I have consulted quite widely on how to approach the ethical approval approach. So that I hope is, if that fails, then you can just write about it in the popular press, in all the magazines.
Right. There's no stopping this, obviously.
So, and because I'm at Northwest University, there's one of the, it's got a Center for Excellence for Nutrition, and one of the professors there has been awarded the chair at the Medical Research Council on hypertension, and she is a nutritionist, and I'm hoping we can broaden this little pilot study what we call because there are a lot of studies which have been, not a lot, you have to look for them. And interestingly, there was a study, I can't remember the author, I've got it, but it was the 21-day Daniel challenge. And in the Christian Bible, Daniel was in the Pharaoh or some king's palace, and he had certain jobs to do, and he didn't want to eat the king's food, which was standard royal fare and all of that. He just wanted to eat vegetables and drink water. So that management was a bit worried that they get ill, so he said, do it for 10 days, see how you feel. And he ended up doing it for 21 days. And that study was done really well scientifically. It covered a lot of aspects. And also at our university, there's a lot of wellness and psychological and health promotional so there's a lot of stuff we can, and the IKS, Indigenous Knowledge Systems, to contribute. So that's the kind of path I'm trying to go with the Ubuntu Wellness Challenge. So there's still a lot of work, and it's strangely it's quite complicated ethically.
Right.
I can explain why if you want, but it is.
Yeah, I can imagine, having to reversing diabetes is a process of also weaning them off the pharmaceuticals that they're on at the moment. So I can see that. So Ian, could you please introduce your other two colleagues?
Yes, and I'd just like to quickly introduce my wife, Dawn, who's here, because she's a little bit shy sometimes, but she's a vegan nutritionist for 25 years and has really been my inspiration for this project and the NPO Ubuntu Trust, which this project sits inside. So Dawn really told me about 10 years ago to get on with it and do something for the community, and especially the women who are gatekeepers to their families and the broader community, and start empowering them, start taking them as the core of that, healing food, knowledge, information, product, whatever they need to get healthy and get connected. So maybe before I introduce the other two, you can say anything, Ronnie.
No, it's just my prayer for us is that we'll, that there'll be a flooding and a gateway for human compassion on this planet, and that the animals will be given the respect and protection they deserve. And that is really my deepest prayer.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce Martin, who's also here. Martin is a very, very close friend, Martin Gluckman. And Martin actually lives between India and South Africa, is an Indophile and a Sanskrit master who runs a language and Ayurvedic knowledge institute in Oroville, where I think you were not so long ago there yourself.
Yes, I was.
And between there and South Africa, Martin's just been, as both a linguist and a computer specialist, been roped into a very exciting Africa language project for the indigenous First People, the Kumani and the San people, to help bring their memory and their language back through University of Cape Town with a transdisciplinary approach to kind of language and knowledge. You could say more about that, but it's the kind of projects he gets involved in, and it's very exciting that he would be interested enough with what Ubuntu is trying to do as a social upliftment, as an innovator and a disruptor in the wellness and health and community space, to come on board to share the Ubuntu Foods program, to come up with innovative new foods for the public. And also he's already connected us to the Food for Life program, which is the biggest feeding scheme in the world, and how they operate in South Africa and give out 15,000 meals a day at like 5 rand a meal. It's just phenomenal things that we're tapping into. So yeah, Martin, maybe you can introduce a little bit yourself. And hello, Shalu has just arrived. Is that right? You're from SHARAN. It's an amazing connection. We're working with SHARAN as well. So we'll talk about SHARAN, and then maybe Martin can talk a little bit about Ubuntu Foods.
Sorry, can I ask Martin a question? Sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Are you any? Do you have any connection with the Dr. Gluckman, who was the, I think, the Minister of Health? Minister of Health in South Africa, when they started the community-oriented primary care system, and he was very supportive of it. So I'm curious.
I think it could be a relative. I'll have to check that out. But I've heard, I did come from a medical family, and there were a number of medical Gluckmans. I heard about a pathologist and a government official.
No,
it was in the 80s. Is that possible?
In the 40s.
Is it later?
40s, 50s.
Oh, 40s, yeah, 40s. Okay, but yeah, I will check it out. I think I am possibly related. I'll double check that.
Yes, please. Go ahead and tell us how you got involved in this. Yes.
Sure. I'm going to share my screen. I did a very quick presentation while you were talking, Sailesh. Lovely to see you again. Can anyone see
Not yet.
my screen?
Not yet.
Is that visible? Well, let's select that and share. And
Okay.
how's
Yeah.
that look? The screen is
Wow.
sharing. Yes. Right. Okay, here we go. So look, this all started in October. Ian and I were sharing an office, and I got to work closely with him and see the incredible magic that he's weaving in South Africa. I've been AWOL in India. I was born in Cape Town, but I've been working with spanning a very broad series of conscious projects, from working with grassroots protection of seeds and organic farming, and then building communities. Really, my real forte was on communities, and living in Oroville, very privileged to live there and eat. Mostly, I would say 80% of what's on my plate is just grown around me, very consciously. So, I was working with Ian, and I saw this incredible magic that he's got, and I thought, look, Africa. We'll start with Africa, and I've also been working with the University of Cape Town as a scholar, linguistic scholar, working with the indigenous Kalahari Basin area languages, which are possibly the oldest languages in the world, and they belong to humanity. They're a very beautiful story and connection with our most ancient past as Homo sapiens. And so I was watching Ian working with his beautiful Breathe project to bring relief to those suffering with COVID and to prevent COVID. And I thought, really, we've got to do something with preventative medicine, which in Ayurveda is all about the 3 pillars, which one of the 3 pillars is about food. And veganism is very much so about conscious food. And I thought Africa really needs a project like I'd been inspired. I don't know if any of you know a project like Rapunzel, and in Oroville we've got cooperative projects that really try to bring up the indigenous and the forgotten traditions. So we started, and it's in the feasibility and pilot phase, but it seems to be accelerating. We've just formulated 80% of our first product, which is a vegan marshmallow called Mallows. I think Dawn has helped us to name it. It looks like it's happening quite fast. And so Ubuntu Foods basically was the idea to take that idea of compassion and humanity and bring it back. And we thought we'd start, so we're incubating it just since October, and we thought we'd start with the braai, just go for the jugular, if you excuse the pun. And the braai is on Heritage Day in South Africa. It's a braai, and that always upsets me, because why must you kill animals when you're celebrating African heritage, which is much deeper than just killing animals. Actually, killing animals has nothing to do with African heritage. And so we want to disrupt the braai in Africa and then trans-Africa, and also export that concept to the barbecues and so forth around the world. Now, we're busy developing a burger, a boerewors. For those who are not South African-based, boerewors is a very much so a spiced sausage, very common in South Africa. It's got sort of star spice and allspice and pepper, so it's got a coriander kind of flavor. And then also the marshmallow. Usually you braai marshmallows, and marshmallow, I'd say we're 70 to 80% done. We've got a first prototype, and we are developing a final product. And the burger, so your average South African eats 21 kgs of beef, and that's almost a baby cow. Baby cow usually weighs about 27 and up kilograms, and that's a population of 57 million. So we're starting with the burger, boerewors. There are already products on the market, but we have a twist, and you'll see it in the next slide, or maybe at the bottom of this slide, and then also the marshmallow. But the idea is really to create a food project called Ubuntu Foods that really takes upliftment through nutrition, through community, and through using as much as possible indigenous foods, and then expanding to create cooperatives that we really create employment and create upliftment for the whole of Africa, really. So it's a 5 and a 10 and a 15-year vision, but we have started in October. It's very exciting to be working with Ian and his team. So at the bottom, you'll see these are indigenous South African foods. This is pearl millet and sorghum and bambara nuts and cowpeas. And very few South Africans, maybe sorghum is being eaten a little bit, but we want to bring these back into the global palette and also the African palette. And so here's the vision, is also to work with forgotten foods and then ultimately to create organic cooperatives and sustaining families and villages, and look at the Rapunzel model. For those who know it, Rapunzel works with farmers and helps them to convert to conscious farming and ethical and fair trade, and then creates employment and sustenance for them. And this is something very much needed in South Africa. And our first sort of triad is the Ubuntu Braai concept, the burger, boerewors, and the marshmallow. The burger is still in development. We're working on it. So I'd say we're 20 to 30% there, and boerewors also. The marshmallow is quite close. So the burger will be plant-based. It's whole foods. There's nothing refined in. Unlike Beyond and Impossible Burgers, which are very expensive and a luxury product, it's going to be on parity with meat, or ideally cheaper if we get the volumes. And we're going to try and use African grains, so possibly this indigenous African rice and also African legumes as the base. And then it will be similar to the Beyond Burger in terms that it will present like a meaty burger, but be more delicious, more wholesome, and much more healthy. Same with Ubuntu Wellness. And here's the V-Mallow here, Ian tasting the first prototype that we visited at our the manufacturing. And this is plant and sea-based, and we're working on doing African acacia tree as the gum. This is and actually, ironically, the marshmallow started in Africa, in Egypt, so it's almost like bringing it home. And we've been surveying the vegan marshmallow markets globally, and it's really got room for African disruption. And yeah, that's where we're at. So it's started. It's still in a incubation and feasibility phase, but it looks like it's going really nicely, and I'm inspired. And thank you. Thanks for letting me present.
Oh, thank you for that. That's it. It's bringing back the foods that we had forgotten.
Absolutely.
Shalu, it's great to see you. Great to have you on the show. Tell us, SHARAN is getting involved in this. Introduce yourself and talk about SHARAN and how he got involved in the Ubuntu Wellness. You are muted. Okay, go ahead. Okay, Shalu has disappeared.
Ah.
Talk to her later. Aisha,
Yes.
so glad to have you here. Aisha has been working with the African American community in Atlanta, Georgia. Please introduce yourself and tell us what vegan meals that heal is doing.
My name is Aisha Robinson. I actually started this work last year. Myself, I've personally experienced homelessness, and I've personally experienced what it's like living in a food desert. In Atlanta, we have quite a few food deserts where people are surrounded by miles of nothingness. The only food that you may have is highly processed honey buns, a lot of sweets, a lot of chips, a lot of sodas. And those are the communities where people have a lot of preventable illnesses, but no one's being told that they could change that if they had access to plant-based meals. And no one's also telling them that they're going to pretty much have to go very much so out of their way to get those vegetables. And so the accessibility for those people is very, very difficult. Since COVID, a lot of the public transportation hasn't really been running the way that it typically has. And people have definitely lost access to a lot of the stores they could get to if they could get there. And initially I decided I wanted to have a vegan potluck last year, and none of the community showed up for it. A lot of people actually told me that unhoused people or people experiencing food insecurity wouldn't be interested in even eating vegetables. And I wanted to challenge that because I've seen for myself that people do want that. I also know for myself that prior to me changing my diet, I was having a lot of health issues as far as seizures. I was having headaches, a light sensitivity, things of that nature. And when I would go to the doctors, they would explain to me that nobody knew what was going on. They tried to say I had lupus. I heard things like I had kidney illness. No one could benchmark what was going on with me, to the point where they were convinced that I had some sort of drug addiction that I wasn't telling them about, because being 24, nobody could explain what was going on. And so last year, it was myself and my mom and my two sons, and we made soup for, I think, 13, 14 people. And we walked down the street to where we know there are a large amount of unhoused individuals, and we passed the food out. And nobody mentioned anything about where's the meat or anything of that nature. And after that, I knew that we had to keep the work going. And so right now, we work with a lot of places or a lot of different organizations that have food waste. And we get the food from them or from local farmers. And then we process the food into meals. And then we go distribute the meals at least twice a week. And so far, we have distributed since last year 4,200, almost 4,300 meals from the back of a minivan. And so we're continuing the work. We're working on getting a soup kitchen, a mobile soup kitchen. So it would be a food truck, but no one would have to pay for these meals. We go around to different hotels, tent cities, people that we might just see sleeping behind stores. And we just want to work on providing people with the opportunity to eat the food that could help them thrive. And they just don't have that type of access to it.
Aisha, you are the perfect food healer. You are the person I wanted to meet. Someone who goes out and does it. We are going to support you in any way we can. I really believe that you're so awesome. This is exactly how it should be done, because when you go and give the food to people, they're not going to say, no, I don't want that.
No.
Yeah. So
exactly. If I presented people kind of like with, hey, you could pay me for this, they would go with what they're already readily accustomed to.
Right.
But if you give it to somebody, they're not going to say no. And oftentimes, because we present the food in a way, like if we have chickpeas, we won't just make chickpeas. We might make a patty out of the chickpeas. But then people will see something that they visually are familiar with and they eat it. And then they'll go, wait a minute, was this meat? And I'm like, nope. But it's amazing because you present people almost mentally with this concept that, hey, you know what? I don't have to eat meat to be full, because that's a really large misconception in the African American and in a lot of minority communities in America, that you can only be full if you eat meat. And so if I don't have meat in my diet, I'm going to starve. And so when people finally get to a place where they understand that meat is not making you full, or the fullness that you feel is just being stuffed, but it's not really being satiated. And so for someone to finally start to learn their bodies enough to say, wow, I'm full of what I need. So we've seen people now and they'll be like, oh, you have some juice today? I want some of that juice. I feel better when I drink that juice. We have a guy we often serve. He has gout and he knows he shouldn't eat meat, but because he's unhoused, he doesn't really have an option. And so there'll be times when we don't see him because he's in the hospital, because he's having an episode with his gout, because the only thing he had access to is like a bologna sandwich. And so it's just great to be able to present people with those alternatives and to bring like veganism into a full circle where people understand that we have to care about each other. Like cruelty-free has to be bigger than just not slaughtering animals. It also has to be cruelty-free amongst ourselves.
Yes.
Absolutely. You resonate with everyone. You're so awesome. We would love to, replicate you a million times right there.
That would be cool. I could probably get a nap if we did that.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
It warms my heart to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ian, I
Can
think
yeah,
Michelle is here.
Is Michelle?
Go ahead, Ian. Yeah.
Aisha, I just wanted to say thank you for the work. It's very inspiring what you're doing, like really on, like ground zero, bringing the health and the healing to people.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I was wondering, perhaps you know already, but it's someone who came into our orbit, and we would really like to include in a movie that we're hoping to do of what's happening in South Africa, and with Silas, what he's hoping to do with diabetes reversal, also in the indigenous Native American communities as well. But have you, Aisha, come across a book that was just brought out last month by the New York Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, called Healthy at Last, Reversing My Diabetes with Plant-Based Foods?
No, I need to find that book immediately.
It's fascinating, and because we are working with some leaders and politicians, I'm really looking to Eric as an inspiration, and he's happy to share his story and to kind of, best practice seminar to our leaders over here. But what drew my attention to him originally was that he actually took some municipal buildings in Brooklyn, in New York, and please God, he becomes mayor in June when he's running for full New York mayor. But he took some municipal building structures and he converted them into the world's first public plant-based clinics, and they have the most amazing programs going on there right now. Hundreds of people enrolling on these vegan, plant-based, whole food conversion programs, out of various non-communicable lifestyle diseases, including diabetes, cancer, etc., etc. So, Eric looks to be a leading light, and he's managed to integrate being a politician with this story in a very fresh and wonderful way, very powerful way. And I was just reading in his book, also quite inspiring, some of the comments, and I saw Al Sharp wrote something that, this is the evolution of wellness, I'm paraphrasing, and represents the move from slave food to soul food. And when I read that in Eric's book, I was like, wow, this is a concept that we need to bring back to Africa, where we have actually the unhealthiest country in the world on paper, with over 50% of South Africans, according to AfriHealth Lagos, etc., where they all met last year and said lifestyle is now way ahead of HIV as the main issues. But over 50% of South Africans are recorded either obese or overweight or obese. So,
wow.
Slave food to soul food, bringing back, Professor Angela Davis was here in 2016 as the keynote speaker for Steve Biko's annual lecture, and she came out, and she's a wonderful activist, Angela Davis, and she spoke incredibly about, for the first time, this like vegan, on a South African platform, brought up the vegan issue, like the V word, it was still like, not, like, it was a rude word 4 years ago. And, she also brought in this concept that, if we don't make those connections and the intersectionality and the connections, then we remain subjected to colonialism and commodification and social justice, racial justice. All of these issues are not being addressed properly. So it seems that it's the one issue that can kind of potentially resolve all of the world's interconnected problems.
Exactly, at one time.
What you're doing, that's really what I wanted to say, and then it all just like came in there. But yeah, please look up Eric Adams if you haven't come across him.
I will. Thank you so much.
Just to comment on that, I mean, would you ever think that Africa no longer is the center of infectious diseases? Its non-communicable diseases have eclipsed them, and who would have thought they would have eclipsed all the so-called scourges of Africa? And also with the TB HIV epidemics, those with them are well, they're doing really well, and our treatment programs here are remarkable, but all of them have all the non-communicable diseases amplified because of their condition. So it adds up with everyone.
I mean, our food system is slowly killing all of us, starting from, Anyway, but this can be fixed. And like Aisha is showing, you can do it on the ground and make it happen.
Nature's so forgiving.
Yes. So Ian, Michelle is your sister. And how is she involved in the Ubuntu Wellness program?
Hi, Mishi. You're on mute. Yes, can't hear you.
She doesn't want to spread any COVIDs.
So tell us how she's involved in the project.
Sorry, could you repeat?
Please tell us how she's involved in the project.
Michelle. Michelle is involved in the project. Sort of from the start, she's been a mentor really to our beneficiaries of Ubuntu Wellness, because we operate in the communities through our non-profit to sort of uplift, to create jobs, develop skills and promote wellness, and uplift predominantly poor, vulnerable Black women. And so, we have much larger targets. We've only reached formally, maybe a couple of thousand with our partnerships with government and the African Community Plant-Based Chef Training, and about 100 through direct training. But Michelle's been involved with really helping mentor a lot of the beneficiaries to reclaim their self-esteem, especially as women. And so, she's been both a supporter and an inspirer of a lot of these women who've been able to reverse their circumstances. And even those who haven't yet been able to reverse their circumstances, but hopefully will in the future.
Michelle, can you unmute yourself and speak?
Can you hear me now?
Hello.
Oh, yes.
Did you not hear anything I said before?
No, we were talking on your behalf. That was very,
Okay.
and he knew you were muted.
Yeah. Was I muted?
You were muted.
Was I? Okay. I'm multitasking here because it's supper time in our family, so I'm cooking and watching you guys. I also, as a writer, it was my job to write about what was going on with the projects that Ian was doing. So, and that was sent to the funders so they could see what was happening and what was being done in the project.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this is really about going back to the indigenous community and saying, welcome home, right? Bring back their own food that they gave us in the first place. It's fascinating.
There's a quite a phrase that we're developing. Well, I've thought, I don't know if it'll be accepted, but we've got to decolonize our plates.
Right.
And there's a lot of that rhetoric, and maybe it can be diverted in something not as there's still, well, the history of South Africa. So by the way, Dr. Gluckman's community-based primary care clinics, the apartheid government squashed them, and the irony is that all the public health experts went all over the world, and they emerged in the South of America, in Israel, all over, and has really got community-based care seeded across the world. So that was an unintended consequence of them squashing it in South Africa during the early apartheid years.
Yeah. This cannot be squashed. It is going to come back. Decolonization is happening.
Salish, just an update. So Dr. John McDougall
Mhm.
has offered to lend his knowledge and experience to the project. He has a particular interest. So thank you so much for that introduction, because as even Professor Andrew was commenting on McDougall's work and how we should try and make a link on that as we were evaluating SHARAN. So there's a particular interest in McDougall's work and his long history in working with and reversing diabetes, but particularly John said he has a special affinity for Africa, and this is a special interest in. Also, as Africa is the most recent, like the latest continent, the last one that's gotten sick en masse through food poisoning programs and the Western diet. So, this is where the focus and the spotlight should go. And he predicts there should be a lot of local support as the story starts to unwind and the results through Professor Andrew and other academic platforms start to be seen and taken seriously. And on that note, we are actually linked with the Western Cape Health Department through other projects, and we'll be working with them. So this is also potentially an internal project that could have a lot of scaling and credibility down the line.
Awesome.
And another angle, if you're interested, is that they're revising their non-communicable disease policy for the country. And I submitted a whole lot of stuff, and they didn't find it. So I've submitted it again.
Do you mean you hid it, Andrew?
No, I've submitted it, and now they've got it. I'll keep on going. But there's some great people working there. So, sorry.
Yeah. No, this is a community effort, obviously. Community has to come together, and just like what's happening in Atlanta too. In fact, Atlanta, Georgia is going through another runoff election. And I wanted to ask you, Aisha, the Senate candidate was caught eating a vegan burger.
Right. He was caught. Honestly, the most interesting thing that I've noticed is in downtown Atlanta, we've always had a large unhoused population. During COVID, it's gotten a lot bigger because a lot of the tent cities are being destroyed by, I don't know if the city officials are signing off on it or if it's something that is just being done by the police. But we have a lot of people being displaced. And with that, there's so many people out there who you talk to them about like who's running for Senate, who's the mayor, who's the president, and they'll be like, all this money is floating around and nobody's coming down here to save us. And that's one thing that I hope that whoever becomes senator, whoever is the governor, whoever actually comes down and addresses the needs of people and addresses their needs based off of what they need and not what we want them to have because it looks good.
Right.
And that's one thing that I hope that can manifest from all of the confusion and all of the anger that's going around right now based off of the election. I hope that people can transmute that anger into love and figure out a way to help the people who need it most. Because while we're arguing and going on Instagram and all types of social media about the issues at hand, it really sucks because people are suffering in the meantime and nobody's coming up with resolutions to really, really change these people's lives the way that they need it to be changed.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's about coming into alignment with the truth. When politicians say you have to wear masks and socially distance yourself, the least they can do is also to tell people eat plant-based.
Right.
Exactly.
No, but they can also say physical distance. They're saying social distance, which is so wrong. They can physical distance. There's science behind it, but social
Right.
distance, there's no science behind it.
And unfortunately, it seems as if with social distance, people are now distancing themselves from each other emotionally.
Mhm.
And then you have people, I've watched people when they're unhoused, people standing outside of their window, that they'll roll their window down and throw things at them, or throw food at them, or throw cold water on them to make them move away from their car. And it's like, if you are feeling like there's social distance wise, there's something in your heart that's leading you towards being so vicious. And
Right.
that's the thing I fear the most, is that people aren't noticing that with this social distance, is not just I'm 6 feet apart from you, but it's also that I don't feel any interaction with other human beings anymore. So I don't feel the need to have empathy for another person.
So
And I think people need to notice that they're not caring about other people. So while you're in your house, it's become more me, and not us. And there's still a us, just because you're 6 feet away from somebody, or just because you're getting your food delivered. It doesn't mean that there aren't still those people that you're shunning. They're still there. They still exist. And so
you
people
know,
really have to get out of their emotions and think about others in the meantime, and not just be like, well, I did my part because I stood 6 feet away from somebody and put on a mask.
Right.
yeah, that's driven by fear, that behavior, and that's the worst communication during epidemic management. I've managed a number of epidemics and outbreaks in South Africa. So the fears is you don't do that, and it's been the prime motivator, and that's why people are behaving like this. And they need to understand what COVID is and why COVID has arrived. And as you said, plant-based. There's just almost a year has gone by. Imagine where those diabetics, hypertensives, asthmatics, where they would be if they'd done 10 months of plant-based.
Right.
And it's just a mask and wash your hands and social distance, not even physical distance. It's and the economy, people have really, first do no harm is a basic tenet of healthcare. Primum non nocere is the Latin phrase for it. And that harm has never before in the history of humankind has so much harm been done. For the avoidable harm. I'm not talking about pandemics that have a significant mortality and that harm is unavoidable. I'm talking about avoidable harm through lockdown and those restrictions. I mean, twice I had my heart jumped during this. The first was watching lockdown being enforced in China. That was scary. And the second was when our president declared the whole country as a lockdown. And in my province, it took 3 months before the virus to arrive. And you noticed more people on the streets, and with a hand to mouth, often it's tough, unnecessary.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much. We are at the end of our time, so thank you very much for being here with us. And
Thank you.
before we leave, Aisha, can you tell us, do you have a GoFundMe that you're trying to raise funds for?
Yes, I have a GoFundMe. It's on our website, www.vmth.org. You can click the link, and we're working towards getting pretty much a mobile soup kitchen. So it'll essentially be a food truck that we prepare our meals on, and that we'll be able to have more space so we can do this more frequently, because we want to be able to make a difference on a daily basis so that people are actually having access to this food and it can start making the changes in people's lives that they really need to see.
So with that, thank
Wonderful.
you so much for all of you,
Thank you.
for making a difference in people's lives.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Sure.